Hello and welcome to a very special edition of A Coffee with Chris, live and direct with you from the High Performance Podcast
Welcome
set in London. This is a festive special. How are you doing, Jake?
Very well, thanks for coming.
My absolute pleasure. It was a privilege to follow you around, seeing how you do things today. Jake, to kick off this Coffee with Chris, we always like to say a big shout out to our two sponsors. One is 𝗖𝗵𝗿𝗶𝘁𝗵, who help local people affected by cancer. The other one is 𝗖𝗵𝗿𝗶𝘁𝗵𝗵, who are here to help you become a better version of yourself today.
Very good.
Jake, High Performance Podcast.
Yeah.
It is absolutely blown up this year,
Yeah.
specifically on social media. And so I'd love if you could share with our massive growing community now, how have you and your team achieved that?
Yeah, okay. Well, look, thanks ever so much for coming down. Welcome to High Performance. Welcome to High Performance. How have we achieved it? I think the first thing is we haven't been in a rush, right? I think that's the first thing that I would like to point out. If we were talking about high performance when we first started recording episodes late 2019, it was me and Damien, Finn, who still works with us today, 2 microphones, no camera, not much of a plan, and we went down, interviewed Ben Ainsley on the South Coast. At the end of the conversation, I remember saying to Ben Ainsley, has anyone ever asked you this stuff before? And he was like, no, it's so great to talk about it. And then we knew that there was something in it. But we carried on not filming the content, we carried on just with a couple of cheap microphones. We carried on with not a single member of staff working for High Performance for a good year. I took no money from High Performance for a good year. Every single penny of ad revenue went back into slowly, incrementally improving things. And then this year we've had our biggest year ever for downloads on RSS, which is where people listen on the podcast or on YouTube. And so I think the first bit of advice when people say, oh, how have you done it, is that we haven't rushed it. We've just kind of slowly evolved organically, and it's taken 5 years to get to this point now. And I suppose the biggest lesson I've learned in all of that time is that just producing a great conversation is not enough. And I think loads of people that I speak to, they go, I have a podcast and I know the conversations are brilliant, but no one listens to it. And the challenge that they have is that having a good conversation is one thing. Having a good conversation, but then also playing the game of the distribution platforms is just something totally different. So what we've had to learn is that what resonates on Apple might not on Spotify. What resonates on Apple and Spotify might not work on YouTube. What works on YouTube and not on Apple and a little bit on Spotify might totally bomb on TikTok. What bombs on TikTok might fly on Instagram. What flies on Instagram might not fly on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So we've got a team of people here who are all looking at different areas with different specialisms, so that every single platform is optimized from a conversation that we have in these chairs. So it almost feels like the smallest part of high performance is our conversation. The biggest part of high performance is all the things that we do with it.
I love that, Jake. Before we get into distribution, because I really want your more specific insights into that, you've said something there which will resonate with our audiences, that lots of people, they get caught up in the magpie effect, which is, I don't have the camera, I don't have the mics, I don't have the sexy podcast set up that you've got. And that's valid, but something that you said to me before we started was, actually, just to begin with, focus on making good shit, I think you said.
Yeah.
We're allowed to swear on here.
Yeah. Make good
And
shit.
that's important, isn't it, to start off with?
Yeah, and I think the other thing is there is a lonely period, right, which we all go through, and I certainly went through it with High Performance, where my wife was like, why are you spending all of your time working on a show and you're not earning any money for doing it? Or we came to the end of our very first season of High Performance, and we had a handful of a few thousand downloads. I think it was 100,000 downloads, which I know sounds like a lot, but that was after like 3 months of the show. That's like, we now get 500,000, 1.5 million a week, right? So it was much smaller numbers than it is now. But the reason why I kept going, and also I suppose 100,000 sounds like a lot, but I was also hosting live Champions League and Premier League football at the time in front of millions.
Yeah.
So 100,000 over 10 weeks versus 2 million on a Saturday afternoon is like, so why did I keep going? Because of a purpose. And I think there's so much out there, there's so many podcasts, there's so many YouTube shows, there's so much content being made all the time, that what will keep you coming back, what will keep you going, what will get you up in the mornings, what will light your fire, is having a purpose. For my purpose, for me, it was having conversations that are really valuable for people. So therefore, the numbers didn't matter, and the income didn't matter.
Love that.
It was about the purpose, and I think that then also makes decisions really easy, because when you aren't sure whether to get a new microphone or use a camera or create an Instagram profile or post on LinkedIn, you only have to ask yourself a really simple question. Does it play to the purpose? If it doesn't play to the purpose, if you find that clipping up little clips on TikTok actually is really toxic for people, and I want to have a really positive outlook and impact, then don't clip up stuff for TikTok.
Bravo.
If getting a camera and filming yourself for a YouTube makes you feel sick, don't do it. Just stick to audio only.
Yeah,
You know,
well
we've been talking today about a couple of things you'd like to do, but you haven't done them. My advice to Chris was, well, the fact you haven't done them tells you all you need to know.
Don't tell people that.
You don't want to. It's not there.
True.
It's not.
Yeah,
it's not
true.
right. It's not fulfilling.
Yes.
So listen to that guy.
I agree, and it's about getting into that mindset of execution of perfection, and therefore you execute on the type of social media content that works best for you and your business.
Yeah.
I just want to talk about distribution, Jake, and you've touched upon some specific channels there. How have your team gone about that, and kind of what's been the most powerful platform, for example, in 2024 that you would recommend people start to get on in 2025?
So the biggest growth platform for us has been YouTube this year.
Yep.
And we put a lot of time and effort into understanding, and I think this is a really important thing to remember, right? Forget the ego metric of followers and subscribers. On YouTube particularly, it just doesn't matter. I'm sure you're subscribed to a few YouTube channels. Are you getting them fed to you? Are you seeing them? Of course you're not. It's not the way it works anymore. You go onto YouTube and the front page is determined by other factors. So I think that we used to love the idea of how many followers have we got. That matters, still great, but it matters less, because my mindset is every single episode of High Performance that goes out, we're starting brand new, fresh. We're not benefiting from a previous episode being great. We're starting every episode fresh, because that's actually the way the algorithm works. You can have an amazing conversation one week. If the next week you have an amazing conversation, but your thumbnail is wrong and your title is wrong and your YouTube title is not punchy enough, or your trailer isn't great, then you suddenly find it doesn't work. And you think about last week 1 million, this week 4,000. How is it so huge? Because we live in an algorithm-driven world, right? We live in a data-driven world, and you have to follow the data. So therefore, it's actually empowering rather than depressing and difficult. And it's empowering because the data is available. I've worked in linear television all my life, where you don't have that data. You don't know why people have tuned into your show.
You can see everything on your phone. You can track
the peaks, the troughs, everything.
Yes.
Even to the point where we know the first question needs to punch in. If the first question doesn't punch in, our numbers are lower. Like, in some ways, you can go, "Oh, I hate that," because I just want it to be real. But what I would caution against is people that say that are almost like protecting themselves because they're worried that doing this is gonna, like, they're scared of success, basically, because if they do all these things and it still doesn't work, it leaves them nowhere to hide. So often people go, "Oh, I'm not playing that game, I'm just going to make great content." Well, go on then, no one will see it. So you've got to do, and it can still be great, empowering, honest, helpful content that is also A/B tested thumbnails, A/B tested titles, where you're absolutely optimizing every single element to make it as good as possible.
I love the concept of testing. Very aware of time, Jake, so we're going to fly through these last two questions. High Performance Podcast is now in a situation where obviously you've worked hard to achieve this, but you're now blessed to be able to work with such great guests. And one of the things that at 𝗖𝗵 Social Media we're always helping people with and advising them and consulting them on is how can your business, how can your personal brand on social media collaborate with people to then open up new networks. And obviously this is something that your team do exceptionally well with High Performance Podcast. So when you get a guest, you filmed a whopping amazing great big podcast, how do you really get the most out of that guest? How do you do that?
In terms of the conversation in the room, then it is about, I think we're helped by the legacy of great guests. So before you walk in the room, there's all these pictures on the wall outside of these amazing guests. I think that puts you at ease, so you know that you're in good hands.
Well, it scared me, Jake. Little old Chris Reed from Norwich to see Tyson Fury at the front door.
But obviously we started with nothing. So then it's about honesty, right? It's about people realising that you're not there to make a quick buck out of them, you're not there to turn them over, you're not there to exploit them in any way. I think, again, it comes back to this idea of a mission. If you can say to them, right, so we're about to have a conversation, our mission at this business, our mission at this podcast, our mission at this company is this, then it helps them because they go, right, well, if that's your mission, no one's going to be a loser here. It'll work for all of us. I think the two most important things, though, when it comes to collaboration, right, is number one, we live in a world where people are, and I said this to you earlier today, we live in a world where people are constantly telling us what we can do for them. You need to tell people what they can do for you and what you can do for them. So instead of getting a guest on and going, we'd like you on because we want to talk about this, and we think it would be great for our business because we want to do this and we want to do that, and we want to put you on our socials to grow our channels, the other person's going, well, that's great for you. I failed to see the upside for me.
Brilliant.
So whenever you go to someone with an idea of something that would be really good for you, also balance that with something that would be great for them. So I want to do this. It'd be great for us because of X and you because of Y.
Value exchange.
And then they can do this because of this and this. The other thing, which is super vital, is the quality. So when you've interviewed someone or when you've done a collaboration with someone, if the assets that you produce are dog mess, and then you give it to them and say, stick that on your socials, I've been in that position, you look at it and go, no. When you produce the most unbelievable trailers, brilliant clips, powerful social media posts,
With you.
people look at it, and everyone lives in this like selfish way. People look at it and go, okay, I'm forgetting about Chris here. He's given me something. What does that do for me, my followers, my brand?
It's that mindset.
Right, does that work? If it works for me and it's great, they're then clamoring to share and collaborate because the quality is high. So keep the quality high. Make sure that you tell them what you can do for them as well as they can do for you, and tell them about the mission that you're on, so they then feel like they're part of the journey.
That's such an amazing insight, Jake. We could go deeper, but we haven't got the time. My final question for you is something else that works, speaking of things that work, is having a personal LinkedIn strategy. And this is something this year I've seen you really delve into. Getting consistent on LinkedIn, giving value, sharing behind the scenes content. You know, it's not just, posturing. You're actually giving tangible value. I just wanted to ask you about, your opinion on personal branding for LinkedIn, having a social strategy on that platform. What have you got off the back of taking LinkedIn seriously as Jake Humphrey over High Performance Podcast?
Yeah, look, I think sometimes LinkedIn gets a bad rap and it gets hit with quite easy stereotypes about like hustle culture and all this sort of stuff. But my take on LinkedIn is it actually is massively powerful because it's one of the few social media platforms that still remains positive and uplifting and encouraging and embracing.
Mostly, yes.
Mostly. That's why mostly on places like X, they're critical of LinkedIn because they don't trust it. Why is everyone being nice to each other over here? Why is everyone trying to lift each other up? Why is everyone trying to help other people? Oh, I don't like that, let's have a pop at it. So that's the first thing, is ignore those people that are critical of LinkedIn for no real good reason. I think the second thing, which is the most important thing for my stuff, is not letting it be ego driven. So I won't ever just go, hey guys, guess what? I've just interviewed Richard Branson. Man, I can't believe how well I've done. What I will say is, I've just interviewed Richard Branson. These are the 5 biggest things I learned from an hour with him that I think you could benefit from. Because it comes back to having a clear mission statement. My mission is to leave the world a better place, to let people know that they can find their own version of high performance, and to help give them a roadmap of how to get there. Therefore, everything on LinkedIn has to fall into that.
Jake, thank you so much for your time on A Coffee with Chris.
Pleasure.
Massive thanks as always to 𝗖𝗍, who help local people affected by cancer. And I will see you this time. Well, actually, no, not this time next week. I'll see you next year.
Happy Christmas.
This is the final episode of the year. So I'll see you guys in 2025. Cheers.